Alright, what's up everybody? Hope you guys are doing good. Today we talk about DB Cooper. I wonder what his why do they call him DB anyway? Is that his name? DB Cooper? Why do they call him that? Oh man. So good to see you, Beaver, Corzer, Lulu, Judy. Good to see you guys. Hope everybody's doing good. Cynical, welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, I'm happy we're doing this case tonight. This is one of the only crimes that I could think like, wow, that is a badass crime. It almost seems completely victimless, except if you were on that airplane, I'm sure you'd be pretty scared at that time. And then, of course, whoever's money that was, $200,000 less richer. But that guy's kind of a badass, DB Cooper, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to go ahead and read an article before we start with the video here. This is straight from the FBI website. I think. Maybe it's just... yeah, it looks like it is. History. DB Cooper hijacking. July 12th, 2016 update. The FBI has redirected resources allocated to the DB Cooper case to focus on other investigative priorities. So, I guess they kind of closed the investigation on it. I don't know. On the afternoon of November 24th, 1971, a nondescript man calling himself Dan Cooper approached the counter of Northwest Orient Airlines in Portland, Oregon. He used cash to buy a one-way ticket on Flight 305 bound for Seattle, Washington. Thus began one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in FBI history. Cooper was a quiet man who appeared to be in his mid-40s, wearing a business suit with a black tie and a white shirt. He ordered a drink, bourbon and soda, while the flight attendant was waiting to take off. Or from the attendant while he was waiting to take off. A short time after 3 p.m., he handed the stewardess a note indicating that he had a bomb in his briefcase and wanted her to sit with him. The stunned stewardess did as she was told. Opening a cheap attaché case, Cooper showed her a glimpse of a mass of wires and red-colored sticks and demanded that she write down what he told her. Soon, she was walking a new note to the captain of the plane that demanded 4 parachutes and $200,000 in $20 bills. That's kind of weird. Like, are people on airplane, are they known to carry that much cash or what? It's kind of weird. When the flight landed in Seattle, the hijacker exchanged the flight's 36 passengers for the money and parachutes. Okay, see, I didn't even know the crime. So they did land. So that's good. He didn't go jump out commando style with a bunch of people in the plane. See, this guy's got some manners. Cooper kept several crew members, never mind, and then the plane took off again, ordered to set a new course for Mexico City. Somewhere between Seattle and Reno, a little after 8 p.m., the hijacker did the incredible. He jumped out of the back of the plane with a parachute and the ransom money. The pilots landed safely, but Cooper had disappeared into the night, and his ultimate fate remains a mystery to this day. The FBI learned of the crime in flight and immediately opened an extensive investigation that lasted many years, calling it NORJAC for Northwest Hijacking. We interviewed hundreds of people, tracked leads across the nation, and scoured the aircraft for evidence. By the 5-year anniversary of the hijacking, we'd considered more than 800 suspects and eliminated all but 24 from consideration. One person from our list, Richard Floyd McCoy, is still a favorite suspect among many. We tracked down and arrested McCoy for a similar airplane hijacking and escape by parachute less than 5 months after Cooper's flight, but McCoy was later ruled out because he didn't match the nearly identical physical descriptions of Cooper provided by 2 flight attendants, and for other reasons. Perhaps Cooper didn't survive his jump from the plane. After all, the parachute he used couldn't be steered. His clothing and footwear were unstable and unsuitable for a rough landing, and he had jumped into a wooded area at night. a dangerous proposition for a seasoned pro, which evidence suggests Cooper was not. This theory was given an added boost in 1980 when a young boy found a rotting package full of $20 bills, 5,800 in total, and it matched the ransom money serial numbers. So where did DB come from? It was apparently a myth created by the press. We did question a man with the initials DB, but he wasn't the hijacker. The daring hijack and disappearance remain an intriguing mystery for law enforcement and amateur sleuths alike. So, additional information I'll just go through here. These are the sketches. This is an FBI artist rendering of the so-called DB Cooper, probably provided by the flight attendants, I guess. Here is a black tie. During the hijacking, Cooper was wearing this black JCPenney tie, which he removed before jumping, and it later provided them with a DNA sample. Here's some money recovered in 1980 that we talked about. Some of that looks a little burned. They said it was rotting too. It could just be rotting. I don't know. The canvas bag that contained one of the parachutes given to D.B. Cooper in 1971 is here. Cooper asked for 4 of them in all, but he jumped with 2, including the one that was used for instruction and had been sewn shut. He used the cord from one of the remaining parachutes to tie the stolen money bag shut. And then here is one of the unused parachutes requested but never used. Okay. All right, so I have one more article by the New York Times, a D.B. Cooper timeline. But first, I want to have a little fun. Let's go ahead and see what my cousin has to say about this. Where is he? Here he is. Link in the description.
Fuck it. XQC watched it, I'll watch it. I actually really like the DB Cooper story. And I haven't seen this one yet. Thanks to resub Rick, the Prime, Gregory, and Mustard.
A daring parachute escape from a flying
Mustard.
727 somewhere between wings.
A search was made of the plane immediately.
We don't know who he was, where he came from, or where he went. I expect that we'll keep looking until we
Arsenal.
find him or find out what happened.
I love the idea that a YouTuber, like, actually solves one of these things. I'm assuming he doesn't, right? But maybe he does, I don't know.
In the afternoon of November the 24th, 1971, a middle-aged man carrying a briefcase walked into Portland International Airport and purchased a one-way ticket to Seattle, Washington.
Different place, Hyper.
The man identified himself as Dan Cooper, and along with 36 other passengers and a crew of 6, he soon boarded Northwest Airlines Flight 305. Once aboard, Cooper made himself comfortable in the middle of the last row of seats on the right side of the cabin. He ordered a drink and had a smoke, because this was the 70s. Once the flight was cleared for departure...
I told you guys he was kind of badass. I mean, he would have picked like the very front row seat if he was like a little nerd or something. He picked the cool seat, the very back one, and he just lit up a cigarette and stuff. What a cool guy. I hope he's not dead. I wonder what he's doing these days.
Cooper turned around and handed an envelope to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. Inside the envelope was a note featuring a handwritten message stating he had a bomb. Schaffner reluctantly sat down beside him and glimpsed what appeared to be
Christ,
8
this story's
sticks
so
of dynamite
fucking wild.
inside his briefcase. Cooper's demands were quite simple. He wanted $200,000
Thanks to
in
resub,
cash
Joe.
and 4 parachutes.
Thank
He
you,
also
Bear.
demanded a fuel truck to stand ready to refuel the aircraft once they landed in Seattle. Should they fail to comply with his demands, he threatened to, quote, do the job. Once the flight was airborne, Schaffner went to inform the cockpit crew, while
This
another
was in
flight
like the
attendant by the name of
60s, so
Tina Mucklow
200K
remained
back
by
then was
Cooper's
nuts.
side. By using
Isn't that kind of funny? Imagine how fast the FBI would be at your door if you spent a DB Cooper 20. That's pretty funny to imagine. Also, hard proof he can't be dead because we've seen like 16 of them sitting there on Twitter. I think there was a couple on YouTube too. DB Cooper's always here, always watching, always rich. He might be my next door neighbor, actually. I wonder how many Nazis relocated to South America. Totally off topic, but sometimes I think like, are there Nazis where I live? I don't know.
A telephone in the rear of the cabin, Mucklow acted as an intermediary between Cooper and the rest of the flight crew.
They're 70s, whatever. Still a ton.
For the next hour and a half, Flight 305 maintained a holding pattern near Seattle, while local and federal authorities scrambled to procure the ransom as well as the 4 parachutes.
Dude,
$20 bills were collected
Mr.
from a
Burgles
local
was
bank,
something else.
while the
Mr.
owner of the
Burgles
nearby
dead.
skydiving school supplied the chutes.
Funny.
At
Yeah, I've seen
5:45
parts
p.m.,
good.
more than 2 hours past its scheduled arrival, Flight 305 finally touched down in Seattle. By this point, it was well after sunset, and the aircraft was brought to a remote section of the tarmac. Once the flight came to a stop, both the ransom...
I'm not sure if this is right. Would 200,000 back then be 1.3 million today? That seems a little overinflated. Like me.
and the parachutes were handed over to Mucklow, who then brought them back aboard. In exchange,
How many people
Cooper
were on
permitted
board the
2 of
plane?
the flight attendants, as well as all the passengers, to
It was
disembark.
36. Pay
Many of whom
attention.
had not yet realized the flight had been hijacked.
36,
With the
60?
ransom paid and only 4 crew
okay.
members remaining on board,
I said
Cooper
36.
told Mucklow to inform the captain that he wanted to fly to Mexico City. They were to fly with the landing gear down, the flaps at 15 degrees and below 10,000 feet. The lights in the cabin were to be switched off, and the aft stairway, which opens from the underbelly of the fuselage, was to remain extended. 2 of Cooper's
Thanks,
demands
Recep
could
Nobly.
not be satisfied. First of all, the
You're
flight
welcome.
configuration he'd requested would not allow for a non-stop flight to Mexico City. As such, Cooper proposed a refueling stop in Phoenix, Yuma, or Sacramento.
Huh. Why didn't he just... I don't understand this. At Seattle, why didn't he just, fuel up the plane? What this seems like it had to be premeditated and part of his plan. Maybe he knew that no matter what the pilot picked, Sacramento, Yuma, or Phoenix, the flight route was going to be the same, and he was planning on getting away or jumping somewhere in the middle, maybe. Huh. They had a cigarette. See, I thought that was butt plug. They had a cigarette, but lost it years later. It was now that they could... Oh, okay, I get it. It's now that they could have tested it, yeah. Crazy. Butt putt.
Before they all agreed on Reno, Nevada. Second of all, it was not possible
It
to
seems like they're
depart with
on
the vent
Cooper's
stairs
side. Like, yeah, you can
extended.
take the money and
Cooper agreed
tell us
to
where to go.
retract the stairs on the condition that Mucklow remained by his side and taught him how to extend them once the plane was airborne. Parked for nearly 2 hours due to complications with refueling, Flight 305 was back in the air by 7:36 p.m. Less than 5 minutes after takeoff, Cooper told Mucklow to head for the cockpit and that from this point onwards, he was not to be disturbed. The last time she
The
saw
bomb
Cooper,
turned out to be
he was
fake, though.
standing
Oh,
in the
sorry, I
middle
don't
of
mean to
the
spoil
aisle
things.
as if though he
Come
was
on,
preparing
man.
to jump.
Thought it was...
Mucklow joined the rest of
It
the
was
crew,
licorice.
locked the cockpit
Licorice
door
sticks.
behind her, and some 3 hours later, Flight 305 safely landed in Reno. Once the flight
Wow,
pressure stopped,
really?
the crew carried...
So I was wrong. That's about right, huh? 200K is over $1.25 million. Wow. 1,338,000. Quite a bit. Quite a bit.
I could be wrong. I
entered
don't
into the
really
rear of
remember
the
that.
cabin, but there was no sign of Cooper, nor the bomb. The aft stairway had been extended mid-flight and was slightly damaged upon landing. It seemed there was only one explanation for the hijacker's absence. At some point between Seattle and Reno, Cooper had strapped on a parachute, walked down the stairs, and leaped into the dark of night.
Is Resub beat on? I'm not sure, Bear.
As soon as it became clear that Cooper was no longer on board, dozens of FBI...
So, hold on again. So he instructed them to like leave him unbothered. So are we led to believe that he wanted everybody that was on the plane to not know when exactly he jumped? It just said that when they found out he was no longer on there, like they didn't know exactly when he jumped, it looks like. This guy seems pretty smart. I don't know, so far people are saying evidence shows he might not have been an expert or an amateur, but he seems pretty smart to me.
FBI agents converged upon the aircraft only to discover a disappointing amount of physical evidence. A black clip-on tie, 8 cigarette butts, and 2 of the
8 cigarette butts. So that was from Oregon to Seattle, and then Seattle all the way there. Trying to figure out if he was chain smoking. That's kind of chain smoking, but not really. He was probably stressed too, you know. Poor D.B. Cooper. Stressed about what to do with his hostages and stuff.
4 parachutes were all that Cooper left behind. Evidently, he'd brought the ransom and briefcase along with him. In interviews conducted on the night of the hijacking, Cooper was described by the crew and passengers as a white
Tier
male with
1
brown eyes
Malkin.
and dark hair. He
There's
appeared to
a
be in his
Robin and the Brown
mid-40s and wore
Banana.
a dark trench coat, a dark suit, a white shirt, a black tie, and dark shoes.
What does swarthy mean? His complexion is medium dark olive swarthy? The hell is a swarthy person? Why don't you just call him a white guy? Medium dark olive swarthy. Okay. Age 35 to 50. 5'9". What do you mean 5'9" to 6 foot? That's like a huge window there. Obviously he was sitting down in the plane, but really 5'9" to 6 foot? 150 to 190 pounds. And black, dark brown hair with brown eyes.
Soon after boarding, he'd also donned a pair of sunglasses.
He was a pervert.
Based on
He had
this
a trench
description, the
coat on.
FBI produced the first of several composite sketches. Before they could mount a search, however, the FBI had to figure out when Cooper abandoned ship. But that was easier said than done. None of the 4 crew members witnessed Cooper jumping from the plane.
Man, this is lagging way too much. What if I turn this down a little bit? Does it look bad? I'm gonna go to 480p on this bad boy.
Nor did the pilots of 2 fighter jets which escorted the flight between Seattle and Reno, which is not all too surprising given it was the middle of the night. Although the flight crew did report something odd. The last communication with the hijacker occurred at approximately 8:05 p.m. when the crew used the intercom to offer assistance, which Cooper declined. Within the next 10 minutes, the crew experienced what they described as an oscillation or vibration of the aircraft. At the time, the crew suspected it might have been produced by Cooper's jump, and a subsequent recreation of the hijacking supported that conclusion.
Ah. Yep. So that seems like that's the time of the jump. They should be able to look back and locate where that was. Okay, you think they found the parachute. Can't believe he did it like dark into the wooded area. I wonder if he meant to do that. The pilot and co-pilot knew because of the security alarm that went off when he opened the hatch door. Oh yeah, that's another one that's interesting. I didn't think of that. That's when it dawned on them that this idiot is really going to jump. Man.
Okay, so that took care of the when, but what about the where? While Cooper was very explicit about the flight's configuration and destination,
Have you ever heard
he
of a
never
case like this?
specified
Who
any
jumps
kind
out of a
route.
plane?
In fact,
Like-
Cooper grew so impatient with the slow refueling in Seattle that he dismissed the captain's request to file a flight plan and simply told him to, quote, get the show on the road. As such, the captain chose to fly along an airway
Makes it
known
give
as
some
Victor
Malkin.
23 without any input from Cooper. By using Victor 23 as a guide, authorities estimated the most probable location of the flight at the approximated time of the jump was about 40 kilometers north of Portland. And so, at the break of dawn, the FBI mounted an impressive search operation using helicopters, airplanes, and ground troops.
You know, in order to do a search for this guy, there's no way that you could do a thorough search, right? Imagine how many miles and miles are like possible. If they think they know where he jumped out, just imagine. And also his parachute, they said it wasn't steerable, so maybe that would help them if they knew where the wind was blowing, because if you can't steer your parachute, then it's obviously going to blow in the direction the wind is going. But I don't know, guys. I don't even know how high was he in the air anyway. Who knows that? What's the biggest proof that you guys think of him not surviving? Just the fact that it's, dark, bad terrain? Or because the fact that they found money, I mean, I think that's a big one too. Why would people find money if he survived? Maybe he had too much. Maybe he didn't care, because that was only $5,800 that was found. Maybe he purposely did that for somebody. Have you seen Without a Paddle? Maybe he's living in a cabin in the woods.
Problem was, even if the estimated bailout point was accurate,
Saving
Cooper's
people
eventual landing or drop zone
getting
was
hard.
far more difficult to pinpoint. The loosely
Fuck,
defined
it's so
search
cool.
area covered a
This guy's like an
vast stretch
actual
of mountainous
Galaxy Brain
wilderness
anime
encoded
villain.
by a dense forest, so it was truly like finding a needle in a haystack. Apart from the difficult terrain, the search was further complicated by low temperatures and inclement weather, which persisted for days.
Wow.
Despite their
Thanks,
best
Richard
efforts,
Ralston and Gidra.
authorities never managed to find a single trace of Cooper, nor the items he brought along with him.
What do you think, Charlie? Charlie, what do you think?
Having made little to no progress by early
He's ignoring me.
December, the FBI turned their attention to the $200,000 ransom. The money had been collected from the Seattle First National Bank, which maintained a ransom package of
Very well-known bank, of course.
$250,000 just for such an occasion. Because of this, the serial numbers of the $10,020 banknotes given to Cooper had been documented in advance, a complete list of which were quickly made available to financial institutions, government agencies, and the general public. The intention was to make it as difficult as possible for Cooper to spend his money. Northwest Airlines and several newspapers even began to offer rewards to anyone who could find a note with a matching serial number.
Do any of you guys remember when that happened? I know there's not many people in the chat now, but I bet everybody was checking their $20 bills. I remember, like, whenever they have a misprint of a penny or a nickel, it's put out in the paper too. I bet back in the day, people were, like, really looking for those. James, what's up, man? Good to see you today.
In spite of these
What?
efforts, no one ever did. That is until nearly a decade later. In early 1980, a young boy named Brian Ingram was building a campfire on a small beach in southern Washington. As he was digging into the sand, Ingram discovered 3 bundles of cash totaling $5,880. Having heard about the infamous skyjacking, Ingram's parents brought the severely degraded bundles to the FBI. The notes were promptly inspected, and sure enough, the serial numbers matched those of the ransom.
Fuck big fine Brian.
Where was that exactly? Just outside of Portland. Is this a river? Was it on the bank of a river?
Brian Ingram was building a campfire on a small beach in southern Washington.
Okay, it was on a beach,
As he was
yeah.
digging into the sand, Ingram discovered 3 bundles of cash totaling $5,880.
Wait a second,
Having
though.
heard about the infamous skyjacking, Ingram's parents brought this.
Does that make sense? It makes a little bit of sense, but not really, because if they were planning on refueling on the way south, he must have jumped pretty quick, because from Seattle to Portland, that's really not that far at all. Huh. You remember Beaver? Okay. I'd like to know who it was too. Yeah, that's what I remembered. I didn't know it was some kid camping. I thought, yeah, Riverbank is what I heard.
Severely degraded bundles to the FBI. The notes were promptly inspected, and sure enough, the serial numbers matched those of the ransom.
Fuck big fine Brian. Imagine
Once
being
the
like an
excitement
8-year-old.
subsided, however,
Fucking
the
drinking
money
milk,
managed to
shitting in your
raise
diapers,
far
and
more
finding that.
questions than it answered. The most significant of which was how? How did the money end up so far away from the drop zone? Looking at this map, it might be tempting.
Wait a second here. Let's look at the... Yeah, Guys, come on. How did... Let me Google something. How far is 27 kms? I don't want to know in meters. Oh, come on, man. Help me out here. How much miles? Nautical miles? What is that? 16 miles? Guys, that's 16 miles away. You can't, it doesn't matter how high you are. You can be in space. You can't swim and float through the air that much. I don't know. It's starting to make sense. There's even a conspiracy theory linking this boy's father to Cooper. I don't know. Is it 6 miles? Okay, yeah, that sounds about right then. So double that and add a little bit there. I got 16 miles in my little calculator over here. There were storms that night. Maybe. Yeah, I'm not going to lie, maybe. If Why don't they look at the weather that day and see where the wind was blowing? How about that?
The drop zone. Looking at this map, it might be tempting to think that Cooper simply dropped some of the money, which then fell into the Lewis River. The bundles could then have been carried further downstream by the Columbia
Thanks to
River
Resub Crones and the
before
Gift
finally
Sub
being
PG.
washed ashore at Tina Bar, which is
No kidding. That makes a lot more sense than I was thinking. Or maybe he threw it out of the plane, out of the damn window. Throw some people off. Good thinking, scientist, whoever made this video. Maybe it floated downstream.
the name of the beach. Tina Mucklow, Tina Bar. Coincidence?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, coincidence. Anyway, the
Wait, what?
problem with this idea is that the Columbia
Who's
River
Tina
flows
Muckley?
in the opposite direction. This has
Screw
led
it.
some, including members of the FBI, to re-evaluate the initial drop zone assessment. For instance, if the drop zone was much further southeast, close to a river called the Washougal River, it is conceivable, albeit improbable, that the money floated all the way down to Tina Bar. Alternatively, the bundles may have
Washougal? Mr. Burgle? Coincidence? Yes, coincidence.
simply landed on the beach if the flight path was further to the west. Even so, natural explanations struggle to explain how three independent, potentially free-falling and/or free-floating bundles of cash ended up at the exact same place on the same beach. To complicate matters, sediment from the riverbed was excavated and dumped onto Tina Bar as part of a dredging operation in 1974. And according to one analysis, the money was discovered above this layer of sediment. If true, that would mean the money came to rest at Tina Bar sometime after 1974.
Cue the X-Files noises.
But a re-examination of that analysis found that what was believed to be a layer of deposited sediment might actually have been a perfectly natural layer of clay. Not only that, but the sediment was clearly dumped some distance away from where the money was discovered.
Obviously, that's
Furthermore,
normal
when
clay.
Ingram
What
discovered
do you
the
mean?
bundles, the rubber bands which held them together were still intact. This is significant because experiments conducted in 2009 revealed that this brand of rubber bands could not withstand exposure to open air or water for more than a year.
Guys, the rubber band science proves. Shout out Citizen Sleuths. Good job, good job. You can't refute this. The rubber band science. They would have been far too weathered. Somebody put that shit there.
So, unless the bundles were somehow protected from the elements, they must
What's
have
up,
become buried at
Bridge?
Tina Bar within
Double
a year
B.
of the hijacking. The
This
most
is so
probable
fucking
explanation
complicated.
seems
Hold
to
on,
be that
hang in there.
Cooper or someone else deliberately buried
got
the
this.
money. Did Cooper survive and bury the money himself?
Yes.
Did someone else bury the money after stumbling upon Cooper's remains?
If you're in the chat,
If
DB
there
Cooper,
is an
just let me know,
explanation
man.
which
This
does
is
not
crazy.
require human
I want to
intervention,
hear more about it.
It's managed to elude investigators for decades. Suffice it to say,
I
this is
didn't
a
know any of
mystery
this part.
within a mystery.
Me either, man.
Since Ingram's discovery in 1980,
What do you
both
mean
Tina
alternate
Bar
drop
and the
zone?
grounds around the Washougal
Here's
River
Prime
have
Zex.
been subjected to
What do they
numerous
mean?
searches.
I have not seen that. No,
But to
Alternate.
date, there's been no sign of Cooper, nor the rest of the money.
At least ease us into that. Where did the alternate drop
You know,
zone
if
come
Cooper
from?
was as smart as we think he is, he
He
would have
is.
done all this while having a full beard.
He did.
And then when he jumped, he would have shaved the beard off. just
From
to
the
add
very
another
beginning, it was
layer
assumed by
of
many
good
that
ideas
Cooper
to
did
it.
not survive his daring escape. It would not make for a very thrilling conclusion to this story, but that's the thing about stories. They're usually far more...
You know what? DB Cooper, he's like the Chuck Norris of that time. He didn't have a beard and jump off and shave it. That motherfucker jumped off the plane and grew a beard on the way down. That's what I think.
exciting than reality.
Without a
While there
paddle,
is no
makes
hard
sense.
evidence
More sense
for
now.
nor against Cooper's survival, the assumption that he fell to his death is not without merit. When Cooper leaped into the darkness, Flight 305 was plowing through...
Debunked. He didn't die. He's obviously too much of a... He's too strong. He didn't die. Maybe. Science probably says that, but I doubt it.
a frigid rainstorm at roughly 170 knots.
Oh
10,000
no!
feet above Southern
Oh
Washington.
no!
The wind was so violent that it ripped out a placard from the aft stairwell.
Oh, Jesus
which was
Christ.
later
He just
recovered in
fucking got
1978,
blasted.
almost directly below the estimated flight path. To say that Cooper was not dressed for the occasion would be an understatement. The ground beneath him, meanwhile, was obscured by multiple layers of clouds, which likely means that Cooper jumped without knowing his precise location.
No.
Even if he could see the ground and had a specific drop zone in mind,
No.
the parachute he selected was non-steerable, meaning he would not have been able to steer his descent towards a specific landing spot, thus precluding
Why are you
any
laughing,
potential
Charlie?
coordination with an
So many
accomplished
problems.
on the ground.
Yeah, but he didn't have any victims, just the bank. And and I'm sure the people on the plane were scared, you know.
He also
While
forgot to
Cooper
account for the
expressed
dragons
some
that hover over
familiarity
Portland,
with
Oregon.
parachutes, his actual competence level is up for debate.
And also, on
It's
that
likely
night, there was a
that
javelin
Cooper
tossing
demanded
competition.
2 pairs of parachutes, 2 primary and 2 reserve, to make the authorities believe that he intended to take a hostage. That is precisely what happened, as the FBI contemplated, but eventually decided against sabotaging the chutes, as they did not want to risk the life of an innocent civilian. But in their haste to obtain them, they unintentionally provided Cooper with a non-functional dummy chute
Oh,
intended
no.
for training purposes. This mishap seems to have gone unnoticed
tried to
by
kill him?
Cooper because that dummy chute was one of the 2 missing from the plane.
Oh, hell no.
Not only that, but Cooper chose the older and technically
Why did they give him a dummy chute? Do you guys think that's fair? If somebody hijacks and tries to take your money, do you think it's fair to give them a chute that wouldn't work? I don't think that's really that fair. I mean, you can't kill somebody because he steals money. It's I don't know.
inferior parachute out of the 2 primary chutes provided.
Nice.
So in both cases, it seems like Cooper made the worst possible choice. But
Thanks
there
to resub
are
AJ,
other ways to
Absolver, and the
interpret
gift
this
sub banana.
information. For instance, it's possible that
Thanks,
Cooper
Cooper,
used the
and resub
dummy
Ken.
chute not as a reserve, but as a means to secure the bag of money. In fact, that is precisely what Cooper tried to do with the functional reserve chute. First,
That's what we read on the FBI website, right? He used the cord from one of the chutes to tie his money. See, maybe he wasn't dumb, guys. Maybe he knew.
he tried to place the money in the chute's canopy before removing some of the suspension lines and wrap them around the bag.
Accidentally.
Perhaps he used the dummy chute for a similar purpose. And Cooper's decision to use the older primary chute is not necessarily an indication of inexperience. It could also be a sign of familiarity, because the chute he left
Right.
behind was
See?
a civilian luxury chute, while the one he used was a military chute. The argument is that Cooper might have been trained as, say, a paratrooper, and chose the older military chute because that's the one with which he was most familiar.
Yeah.
Can you guys that makes a lot of sense. Imagine you're not very you kind of know about parachutes but not really. Wouldn't you take the civilian luxury one? It looks new. It probably looked newer, better condition. But this guy takes the old school military one. He probably had military experience. I bet. Probably. I can understand that, Happy Tree. A lot of people are scared. I'm just happy he didn't take any hostages, and throughout all the accounts, he never seemed violent. The only bad thing that he ever did was rush the people in Seattle. He wanted to get the show on the road. Kind of a classic way to say, hurry the F up. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just used to being in true crime and really watching myself with glorifying and talking good about serial killers. So when I look at someone like DB Cooper, I'm just like, damn, that guy was cool. Kind of cool.
I'm
And
starting to
there's
doubt it.
one other
I don't
reason
think
to
so.
suspect that Cooper had a military
You could have
background.
given him a
While the
giant
flight
pair
was
of
in a
pants and he
holding
probably would have
pattern in
jumped off
Seattle,
holding them.
Cooper mentioned that the
I think he's
McCord
dumb as
Air
fuck
Force
now.
Base was only 20 minutes away from the Seattle-Tacoma airport.
Damn.
At the time, that was an accurate assessment and might suggest a military background. Apart from the potential military connections, Cooper may even have had links to the Central Intelligence Agency.
I doubt
You
it.
see, the type of
Probably.
aircraft which
He was
Cooper
probably
chose
like
to
a Redditor
hijack,
before
a
Reddit
Boeing
existed.
727,
Come on.
was also used by the CIA to covertly drop agents and supplies during the Vietnam War. A task for which the Boeing 727 was uniquely qualified due to its distinctive aft stairway. So it's fairly safe to assume that Cooper chose to hijack a Boeing 727 specifically because it provided a relatively safe means of escape. Whether he learned of this from the CIA or came to that
I
conclusion
like the sound
independently
effects when he jumps
is
out.
another
Sub Sugar
question.
Daddy.
However, the fact that Cooper chose to hijack a
X-Files
flight
sounds would be
operated by
better, though.
Northwest Airlines was apparently random chance. When
Do you think maybe the airline company maybe did something to him? It was the Orient Airlines from somewhere. Maybe his previous flight, because remember he asked for the bourbon and stuff. Maybe they didn't give him his peanuts. He really liked his nuts.
Tina Mucklow asked Cooper about his motives, he responded, "It's not because I
T-Nut
have a grudge towards
Mucklow?
your airline.
T-Nuts?
It's just because I have a grudge."
Oh, that's
He
kind of
further
fucking
clarified
cool.
that
Wait, what did I
Flight
say?
305
About a grudge?
right place at the
You're
right
not.
Cooper stated that the Northwest plane just happened to be in the right place at the right
Trapped
time.
in here with me.
Even so,
I'm trapped
it's
in here with
clear that
frigid
Cooper
weather
came
temperatures and a
prepared.
bad plan.
He seemed to know a great deal about aircraft and aviation.
Flight crew observations looks like he demonstrated extensive technical knowledge of aircraft and flying. And I think he was, I don't think he was just a random guy.
He appeared to be familiar with the local terrain. He maintained a low profile to avoid a panic. He covered his eyes with a pair of glasses to conceal his identity. He left very little evidence behind, and he demanded 4 parachutes to force the assumption that he was taking a hostage. He was even cunning enough to reclaim the note which he'd initially given to Florence Schaffner.
That's one thing that I don't get about asking for 4 parachute. Wait, no, okay, I get it. Because at the Seattle airport is where he requested the parachutes, get it? So he took flight members with him. Yeah, the flight members and the pilots they'll know he doesn't have a hostage. But everybody on the ground, seeing how many parachutes he requested, yeah, they'll probably be like, uh-oh, he's taking hostages. I get it. Huh. Yep, Icarus, I think his name was Brandon. Yeah, I found it on the Tina riverbank. Coincidence? Yes, it is. That's a good assumption. Or right, what do you call it? Deduction or whatever. Nice deducing MS. Most likely in Vietnam. Huh.
Apart from the name he wrote on his plane ticket, there are no other samples of Cooper's handwriting. But for all his planning and cunning,
Vietnam is the first place where they train people to jump out of the Boeings? Okay. This is just really interesting all the way around. We need Derek Godsey over here. Can somebody call him for me? Somebody get him over here. I want to talk to him. Sick of this Charlie guy, the guy on the screen. He turned on me. We were having fun, and then he started calling DB Cooper stupid, and I don't think he is.
it seems Cooper did not give enough thought to his eventual escape. Not
Yeah, the
only
most
did he
important
fail to
part.
specify a route, but he was forced to
I
make
did
a
it.
last-minute destination
Now I'll just
change
kill
from
myself
Mexico
out here, I
City
guess.
to Reno. He could have demanded more appropriate parachuting equipment like a pair of boots, a helmet, or jumpsuit.
Look at that simulation. He is like a rag doll. No shit. He can't guide his parachute, let alone even breathe. Probably. Just look at that.
He could have demanded more appropriate parachuting equipment like a pair of boots, a helmet, or jumpsuit. He could even
Yeah, maybe a coat. Didn't he jump out with a suit? I mean, he had a trench coat and some like dress shoes and shit.
and have specified the ransom to be delivered in larger denominations to make it lighter and less cumbersome
Jerry,
to
thank
carry.
you so
Thanks
much.
to Tier 1
Assuming
Joe.
he did
Thank you,
survive
Jerry.
the fall and made it safely to the ground, he may then
Hope
have had
you're
to
doing
make
really
his way
good.
through
Always
a
good
dense,
to see you
partially
here.
snow-covered forest in nothing but loafers and a trench coat in late November. I get a distinct impression that Cooper's escape was much more of a leap of faith than a carefully executed jump.
I don't
On the
think
other
so.
hand, authorities never received a
I love
missing
the
persons
animation
report
he
that
has here
matching
with
the
it too. He
description
looks
of
like he's
Cooper
really fucking
in the
struggling
wake of the
falling out.
hijacking. This might suggest that Cooper did survive and that he swiftly and quietly resumed his normal routine.
Guys, I find it really hard to believe that he would have just jumped into the night, into the woods, without knowing where he was, like, purposely. I think he had a plan. I think if he really had to rethink his plan or something like that, he had the hostages he needed. He could have, landed and did something else. I think whatever his plan was, I think he tried to do it. That's what I think. Huh.
Furthermore, other hijackers have performed similar stunts, and many of them did survive, even if they were quickly apprehended. Finally,
This is the only, what type of crime is it? It's the only one unsolved in history. It's not the only plane hijacking in unsolved in history, is it? Or is it just, no, airborne piracy, I think is what I'm thinking of. Like airborne pirates.
simplest explanation for how 3 bundles of cash ended up at Tina Bar is human intervention. At the end of the day, most of this is based on nothing but supposition. Without any concrete evidence of Cooper's demise, it leaves the door wide open to the far more exciting proposition.
Remember where we're at, 1844. I'll be right back. I want to look at this thing. I definitely have to write that down. I suck. 1844. 1488. Okay, here we go. Where's this, the jump and then where he ended up is just really weird. I want to see that on the map again. It's not here, is it? No, that's where he was possibly going to refuel. MS thinks maybe he jumped closer to Reno. Kind of makes sense. God damn it. And there was an alternate drop zone too, I saw. Okay, well, the search area was 16 miles away from where the money was found, I think. This isn't the picture I'm looking for. Darn it. It makes more sense, though, to jump closer to Reno. Where is it? Come on, man. Wait, there it is. There it is. Yeah. What do you got? Did you get me 2 big cakes? Yeah. Ooh. Wait, what's this? Yes. Thank you, baby.
Daddy, ¿podemos jugar con arena mágica?
Yep, in a little bit. Sorry about that. Can you guys hear me? My microphone went out. Check. Okay, yeah. I can see the sound. Huh. Let's see. That's what they said. That's what they said, that the flight crew stayed in front so they didn't see when he jumped. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, at a certain point, they radioed back to him and asked if he needed assistance, and then he said no. So that was the last time that they knew he was there. But then they said they felt like a vibration throughout the plane, and that's where they think he jumped off. And then they recreated when he jumped off, and it kind of did that, like it vibrated a little bit. I mean, you think more close to Washington. Man. Yeah, Adeline went to a birthday party or something. I asked her to bring me back a couple pieces of cake, please. She got me a cake and a sandwich. That's really nice. So this drop zone is just so far. It doesn't make sense, kind of. I think, what if he threw something out of the plane and then jumped later? If you throw something out of the plane, then the vibration's going to happen anyway. They might think that's when he jumped out, but then he jumped later. I don't know. Maybe the storm was just so bad that it carried him all the way over there. Maybe he died. Probably not, though.
He ended up so far away from the drop zone.
No, we're going back to 1844. There we go. Perfect.
That he did, in fact, survive.
Nah, I've now been convinced that he's a fucking idiot. There's no chance. This man dove off in the middle of the night in the worst possible conditions. He should have. It's like he jumped into a volcano.
Among them was
he would have had a higher
man
chance of surviving
with
that.
Initials DB and surname Cooper. This Cooper was quickly eliminated as a suspect, but due to a mix-up by the press, the name Dan Cooper was confused for DB Cooper, and the rest is history. While Dan Cooper is most likely a pseudonym, there is a comic book series of the same name. The comic is written in French and centers around a Canadian pilot named...
That's what you were saying in the chat. I think Judy was telling us earlier. Something about this comic just stinking of DB Cooper. Well, it really does. I mean, just look at it. It says Dan Cooper, and then you have a parachuting badass on the cover. I bet DB Cooper wishes he was, he had a helmet and all that stuff. Can you imagine? Did he not even have goggles jumping? That guy had to have been experienced. Yeah, there's no way. There's no way. Is that true crime? Jesus? What if DB Cooper's bridge guy? Happy Tree, do you really think that Barry Morphew is BG, though? Just wondering. I think you're joking. Superheroes don't need goggles. Forgot about that. I might be imagine him growing a beard on the way down. Like perfect disguise ready when he lands. That's what I think. Just freaking ripped his pants into... Just grabbed the pant legs and ripped them off, and it turned into short shorts, ripped his shirt off, and then he had a beard. Ready for a freaking Jimi Hendrix concert or something. I don't know. That's what I think's going on. Matter of fact, let's look at all the rock concerts that were going on near the drop zones at that time. Probably parachuted right into the... Alright, I'm gonna...
named Dan Cooper. While the comic was not translated into English nor sold in the United States before 1971,
okay, I got you.
It was available in Canada, which has a large French-speaking population. Given that American and Canadian accents can be difficult to
Tier 1
distinguish,
MD wall.
it's possible that Cooper, who was described as having no discernible accent, was a bilingual Canadian.
That's funny. When DB Cooper jumps out of a plane, he doesn't fall to the earth. The earth rises to him. Oh, that is great. That is great. Yeah, no more Chuck Norris jokes. It's now strictly DB Cooper jokes. He's my new hero. Can you guys think of a more badass victimless crime, minus the very scared people he took as a hostage? I can't think of a... He looks so normal. He looks like Frank Sinatra. That does look kind of olivey. He does have an... What did they say? An olive schwanky? What was the descriptive word they used to describe his skin tone? Swarthy. The hell is swarthy? What up, Slim? Good to see you, my man.
This might even be supported by something that Cooper might have said. You see, when the captain relayed Cooper's demands to air traffic control, he used the phrase negotiable American currency. It seems doubtful that an American citizen would specify American currency, so perhaps Cooper was not American. The problem is, we don't know if this is a direct quote from Cooper or paraphrasing by the captain. For instance, notes taken by the crew during the hijacking merely contain the phrase negotiable currency, while testimonies provided by the crew after the hijacking include phrases like $200,000 in cash and circulated US currency. So Cooper might have been Canadian. And
I think Cooper might have been an alien.
Dan Cooper
At this point, he could be anything, anyone. We could all be DB Cooper.
Might have taken his name from something or someone else.
I was going to say
Nearly
that.
half a century has gone by since the hijacking took place, and in that time, thousands of suspects have been questioned and investigated. It would obviously be impossible to cover all of them here, but let's take a look at some of the people that at some point or another have been suspected of being DB Cooper.
It's just a picture of my dad. This man loves working on old cars.
First became a suspect.
He's never
in
parachuted, but we thought it was worth
and on
checking
the
out
surface,
anyway.
He seems like a solid candidate. He was a decorated army paratrooper and helicopter pilot.
See,
He had
that's the type of
experience with
guy we're looking
explosives.
for.
He had an extensive criminal record. He had an uncle named John Cooper who was an avid skydiver. He was expelled
He had an uncle skydiver named John Cooper. Oh my god.
from the army only months before the hijacking.
Dude, just wait till we see the other people of interest. I bet all of them are going to have equal amount of circumstantial
Which might suggest a motive.
Whoa.
After all, the hijacker did say he had a grudge. When confronted
He
by
did.
journalists and private
He
investigators, Rackstraw would neither confirm nor outright deny that he was DB Cooper.
It's him,
Instead,
then.
he'd say things like,
That face kind of looks like him, don't you think? It kind of looks like him. It looks... Dude. This is the... Do you know how everybody in Indiana looks like Bridge Guy? Literally everybody looks like DB Cooper, I think. He looks like he can just be put in the Rat Pack and he would blend in. Ah, that's interesting. If he jumped near Reno, went and changed the money at a casino, then it could be why only the Tina Bar money was found. I was wondering, see... Only other thing I could think of is either he died because he died, that's why they found the money. He threw the money itself out of the plane first. That wouldn't make sense. The rubber bands were still intact. Never mind, that doesn't make sense. The conspiracy theory with that kid who found it being connected. Why would that money be there? It's just so weird. That makes sense what you said, MS. I wonder. Fred Rogers. All of the survivors are treated like celebrities at the yearly CooperCon. Is there a CooperCon? I want to go there. I bet that's where Derek Godsey lives. It's a year. He's living in a Cooperthon 24/7.
I could have been, or I would not discount myself.
Thanks for the
On
gift
the
of
other
the
hand, Rackstraw had light-colored eyes, which
And
Cooper
thanks,
did
Cooper,
not.
again.
More significantly, Rackstraw was only 28 years of age at the time of the hijacking. This is well outside the range of ages reported by the crew and passengers, most of whom believed Cooper was in his mid-40s.
That is kind of... The age thing is big. Also, guys, I think we need to take a look into these survivors. One of them literally sat down next to DB Cooper and looked at him for a long time. Like, obviously, a witness would be able to say, no, that's not DB Cooper. Why did anything ever happen like that? Really? The FBI agent that was first on the scene says he believes Rackshaw was Cooper. Yeah. What about the I think we need to talk to them. If those maybe they got paid off. That's a lot of money back then. They should have known who was the kid. Guys, I solved the case. We need to track him down. All right.
Kenneth Christensen first became a suspect
that
in
victim
2003
blaming?
when
I'm
his
just kidding.
brother
That's my bad.
noticed certain parallels between him and Cooper. Christensen had briefly served as a paratrooper in World War II, and since 1953 he'd worked for Northwest Airlines as both a mechanic and a flight attendant. He was 45 years old at the time of the hijacking. He was left-handed, which Cooper might have been. For instance, Cooper used his left hand to interact with his briefcase, and the clip-on tie he left on board was a fixed
What do you mean he might have been left-handed? That's like saying he might have been right-handed, and he might not have had any hands at all.
with a tie clasp applied from the left. Shortly before he died in
There was some
1994, Christensen had supposedly told his brother, "There is something you should know, but I cannot tell you."
Uh-oh.
After his passing, his family discovered over $200,000
No.
in his bank accounts. To top it all off, Florence Schaffner stated that photographs of Christensen bore a strong resemblance to Cooper.
I don't know, guys. He might have been left-handed.
Why don't you
On
check the
other
serial
hand,
numbers on that
Christensen
money?
did not match
In
the
his hand.
physical
He was
description of
left-handed.
Cooper. He was both shorter and lighter.
He's a freaking
While
lefty.
Schaffner did see a strong resemblance, she remarked that Cooper had more hair, and that is supported by the composite sketches.
And he was
there
using his
nothing
left hand.
suspicious about the large sums of money, which he simply earned by selling land.
He answered the phone with his left hand.
This is the
Richard
70s. It wasn't
McCoy
digital.
first
I'm sure he
became
had
a
it
suspect
physical.
In
He's a liar.
1972, when he hijacked a Boeing 727 and escaped via the aft stairway, much like D.B. Cooper. Because of the significant overlap between the two hijackings, some believe they must have been committed by the same person. McCoy used a fake name, he used a fake hand grenade to threaten the crew.
Yeah, all of these guys seem like they have problems. Seriously, all of them seem like very DB Cooper-ish. And what the hell is up with them all looking the same? They seriously look the same. Is this the same guy as this first one? And the second one? What's the difference between how they're describing him anyway? This is like so super circumstantially DB Cooper, all of them. Used a pseudonym, used an explosive device, hijacked and parachuted from another Boeing 220. Come on.
He used handwritten notes to issue his demands. Both McCoy
Imagine how many copycats they would get, though. I think we should take that into account. Everybody wants to be DB Cooper after this.
and Cooper used the phrase "no funny stuff" as a warning to the crew. McCoy demanded $5.
Wow, that sounds totally like him. You know, like old school gruff, like when he was waiting at the airplane, said, "Want to get the show on the road." He probably said it like that. "Get the show on the road." And then he says, "No funny stuff." Instead of saying like, "F you, mother effer," he said, "No funny stuff." He's very, very classic with the insults. Even when he's getting upset.
$500,000 in cash and 4 parachutes.
And for probably a copycat. What do you guys think? Probably a copycat.
McCoy also
What the
bailed out the
fuck?
back of the plane once they passed over his hometown in the state of Utah. Apart from the
What the
similar
fuck?
modus operandi, McCoy had also served in the Vietnam War as a demolitions expert and a helicopter pilot.
This is probably my most strongest suspect at the time.
McCoy did actually survive the fall and managed to evade authorities for 2 full days before he was apprehended and sentenced to 45 years in prison. Before his death in 1974, McCoy refused to confirm or deny that he was D.B. Cooper. On the other hand, McCoy was an avid recreational skydiver and even came prepared with a skydiving helmet and jumpsuit. He gave very specific
Thanks to Tier 1
instructions about the
Stubbs.
flight
We
path.
give Sub
In
King
addition to the
also.
fake hand grenade, McCoy also used an unloaded handgun to threaten the crew.
Well, the first time they had a problem with the flight path that made it longer, so maybe the second time he came prepared, and maybe the first time when he jumped, he was like, "Fuck, I should have brought goggles." So then he learned, but I don't know.
He failed to retrieve one of the notes he'd given to a flight attendant. He was only 29 years of age at the time of the hijacking, and all 3 flight attendants were quite certain that McCoy was not Cooper. While there are meaningful parallels between these
That's
two
a
cases,
lot of
McCoy
parallels.
might simply have been a copycat who'd read about DB Cooper in the news.
That is a lot of fucking parallels, though. Holy shit.
Dwayne Webber first became a suspect in
That guy doesn't look like the sketch. He looks like my dad. No, I'm just kidding. My dad doesn't look like that. If he had lived, wouldn't he have ran out of money and sold his story? That's a good question. I don't know about being federal and how the investigation was open till 2016. I don't know if statute of limitations would run out, but that's a really good question.
1995, when shortly before his death,
Hey, it
he
kinda looks
supposedly
like the
told his
sketch,
wife,
actually.
"I've got a secret to tell you. I am Dan Cooper."
Another guy with a
Following his
secret?
deathbed confession, Weber's widow recalled a number of fascinating details.
Basically gives subject
She
to
claims they
DB
found a
Cooper
bank
himself.
bag resembling the one used in the hijacking. She claims Weber had sustained a knee injury after jumping out of a plane. Weber supposedly had a nightmare about leaving his fingerprints on the
Imagine him like running down the street and he just trips and falls on his knee. He goes home and he tells his wife it's because he's DB Cooper. May have had a nightmare about leaving his fingerprints on the aft stairs. Wow, just screaming him in the middle of the night. I left my fingerprints on the plane when I jumped out of it.
aft stairs. And a year before the money was discovered at Tina Bar, Weber had allegedly paid a quick visit to the same location.
But why would he put money in there? For fun?
In addition, Weber was a World War II veteran, he had
Uh-oh.
an extensive criminal record, he matched the physical description, and he was 47 years old in 1971.
You know, what do you think, MS? You say he probably was in Vietnam, but what do you think about being in World War II instead? Because Vietnam was kind of like really, really recent and like at the time of the jumping. But if you remember how he got to pick between the parachutes and he picked the older military style one instead of the luxury civilians one? Maybe he knew that, you know, I think we should find out what wars that the parachute was used in. I don't know. Because if he was 35 to 50 years old, maybe he was a World War II instead. Okay. You think as far as wars go, Vietnam would match the best? Okay. I'm not good with the years, what time they happened. I just know that Vietnam seemed like it was like really, really recent compared to this.
On the other hand, Weber's fingerprints did not match any of the prints collected from Flight 305. Although, to be fair, there's no way to know if any of those prints actually belonged to Cooper. Furthermore,
Well, why did you bring this up only about Dwayne Webber? What about the other 3 suspects? What about their fingerprints? Did they not match any of the other 66 unidentified prints? How come the fingerprints are just now being brought up? These people are weird who make these videos.
Weber's DNA did not match a DNA sample collected from the tie clasp.
What about the other
But
ones?
once again, there's no way to know if the DNA on the tie clasp actually came from the hijacker and not someone else. What's so frustrating is that the FBI likely had a much better source of DNA at one point. If you recall, 8 cigarette butts were collected from the scene and there's
Oh, I
a good
forgot
chance
about
they
that.
were all suffused with Cooper's DNA. The problem is, that evidence was lost at some point and has not turned up since.
How?
You know how... I mean, there's a lot of people like myself, like you don't have a specific brand of cigarettes that you smoke, but why didn't anybody release what brand of cigarettes they were? And then look at the suspects, if they smoked and what type. Is any of these suspects not smokers? They obviously aren't DB Cooper if they don't smoke, right? They lost the cigarette butts? Must have been FBI. Yeah. Must have been FBI. They do that.
What do you do? Shove him up his butthole before jumping off? How did...
William Smith first
How?
became a suspect in 2018. Smith served in the Navy.
I
during
totally
World
forgot
War
about
II
that.
And likely had
Well,
some
they probably did
experience with parachuting. He was 43 years old at the time of the hijacking. He had dark brown eyes. He matched the physical description. He shared a certain likeness with the composite sketches.
Guys,
especially
that
with
one really
speculative
looks... Oh, damn, look at that aged one. Guys, that looks like him a lot. Who's William J. Smith? That freaking looks like him. That's Frank Sinatra's
sketch
dad.
of an older DB Cooper. A student named...
That's
Ira
definitely a
Daniel
drawing
Cooper
from his
who was
grandson or
killed in
something.
He was 43 and 71. Matched the physical description. may have known a student named Ira Daniel Cooper in high school. What, you mean like a high school sweetheart, and then he named himself after he took her last name? What? That doesn't, okay, that's too, come on.
Two attended the same high school.
That is just that man.
Smith worked as a
drawn by his
yardmaster
son.
for a railroad company for most of his life, but in 1970 the company filed for bankruptcy. As a consequence, Smith lost his pension, which might suggest a motive. He could, for instance, have developed a grudge toward...
There was probably other wars too, like not just Vietnam and World War II. Like if he was Canadian, maybe they'd have, obviously they have a military too. We don't know where he's from. I'm assuming he's American, though. That's what my guess is. I don't think he's Canadian, even though they said he was talking with a bilingual Canadian or some shit. I don't really remember what they said. He seems American to me. But yeah, I like your thinking there, though, MS. Yeah, I don't know when World War II was, or Vietnam for that matter, but either way, to me it seems like he would have military experience.
Towards the airline industry for their role in bringing about the downfall of the rail transportation industry. It's further speculated that Smith could have used his knowledge of railroad networks to hop on a train and escape undetected. On the other hand, Smith spent his entire life in the northeastern United States, given that...
Oh my god, imagine that. Jumping off of a freaking airplane and then hopping on a train to escape. Wouldn't that be so cool? Jump off a plane and escape by a train. With some green eggs and ham.
That the hijacking occurred on the other
Please
side
give
of
some
the
King
country
Oso.
and was committed
You're
by
welcome.
someone who at least appeared to be familiar
I
with
guess
the local
Colt, yeah.
terrain. Smith is not the most ideal candidate. However, the fact that Smith worked as a yardmaster is interesting. You see, the tie that Cooper left behind was recently examined using an electron microscope, which uncovered various metallic particles. Some of these particles, especially pure titanium, were quite rare in 1971. This might suggest that Cooper worked as a manager at some sort of chemical or metallurgical facility.
Why does that suggest that he worked at a metallurgical? That doesn't mean anything. It could mean that he's upper class or just that he had a taste, he had money. What do you mean titanium shreds? Like, I don't understand. Also, this tie is from JCPenney too. That was a really big, huge just like in the John Bonet case, that touch DNA, they don't know where it came from. This is different though, but...
In 1971. This might suggest that Cooper worked as a manager at some sort of chemical or metallurgical facility, or possibly a rail yard.
I think it's him! The old man!
If nothing else, I hope this limited selection of...
Maybe it was just metal shavings from his fake bomb he was making. Or maybe he was... I don't know.
Suspects illustrates just how difficult it is to be certain when you have so little evidence to work
Yeah,
with.
that was fucking fascinating.
Obviously, all of these men are DB Cooper, right? All 5 of them? I mean... Actually... The top middle one, it might be him. He's the only one who's smiling with a little smirk on his face. He's like, ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. I died with over $200,000 in my bank account and I was just a measly pilot. I got away with it. No, I'm just kidding. That would make sense to me. If all 5 of them are DB Cooper, which one of them stands out? It would be the one who was supposedly left-handed. Died with $200,000 in his bank account. Come on. It's the middle one, we all know. Case closed. Just kidding. Let's go ahead and see what else we got. I'm just going to play another quick video and then we're going to get out of here. This comes from Fox 13 Seattle and it was only posted yesterday. DB Cooper investigator believes that he has solved the decades-long mystery. All right.
All right, so there was a thin black clip-on tie worn by DB Cooper that was recovered in Reno, Nevada when the Skyjack airliner landed, ostensibly to refuel to head down to Mexico. The tie was manufactured by a company called Remington Apparel in North Carolina between 1962 and 1964, and these dates are important. All these things line up, so it's important to keep that in mind, the date. The tie was sold exclusively at J.C. Penney's, and this was between 1962 and 1965. And the reason why I say 1965 is because I know that the last year the tie could have been manufactured was 64, so presumably they didn't have a stock that was any greater than 1 year. So I'm assuming that the tie was sold no later than 1965.
Okay, we got the tie expert, and he is laying it down for us. You heard him.
They did continue to manufacture the tie, but there were
Damn right
differences.
they did.
I can point to this tie specifically and isolate that time period. The tie was analyzed by the FBI in the early 70s, and very little evidence was procured, obviously, the early 1970s. However, in the early 2000s, there was a paleontologist named Tom Kay, a private citizen, who was actually granted special access to the tie as well as some of the other evidence. And the tie was held in FBI custody during this period of special access. What Tom Kay did is he applied sticky stubs to the tie, and what they are basically these things here. These are sticky stubs.
Thank you, because obviously that was my next question. Can you please tell us what the hell a sticky stub is? All right.
They're little stubs, and you pull.
I got a sticky stub. No, I'm just kidding. That's pretty weird. So he's really gonna have to describe this one, because I'd imagine somebody just showing that to you and be like, "Hey, guess what this is?" I don't know, man, but usually I want to just press the red button, but I'm afraid of this one. It looks kind of weird.
There's a little sticky, I guess, wrap on the end of it, and you just literally affix it to the tie. And you pull the sticky stub off, and it pulls particles and things off of the tie. By the way, this is exactly what D.B. Cooper's tie looked like. This is not the tie, but this is precisely what the mother-of-pearl tie clip looked like, and this is the size of the tie to give you an idea. So those sticky stubs were applied to the tie in various locations. The complete tie was not sticky stubs. So in other words, there were certainly parts of the tie that nothing was taken from, nothing was analyzed as far as particles are concerned. Tom Kay's research, after he pulled these sticky stubs off, he analyzed the particles under an electron microscope. He discovered titanium, stainless steel, aluminum, and several other particles on.
Okay, titanium, stainless steel, aluminum. That's more than just titanium as they were talking about. But this is just from 1 day ago, so this is probably the newest information. Maybe he did work at, one of those places, metallurgical thing, or however the hell you pronounce that, to have that. But what if this is all just a big long shot? Because I hope they got an exact JCPenney's tie and compared them, sticky stubbed all of them to see if they all have those particles instead of just that one.
On the tie, which was obviously reported in the early 2000s. Now in 2017, importantly, these carbon sticky stubs, the ones that Tom Kay had, were submitted
Where
to
else would they find those
McCrone
metal
Labs
shavings
in Chicago. These guys are world famous, well-known experts with respect to this type of thing. And they put these sticky stubs under an electron microscope for the purpose of seeing what else could be found on the tie.
No, I didn't know that. It's okay to be off subject. Jack the Ripper might have been identified via familial DNA. I had no idea. I didn't even know that he had usable DNA. And was it a letter that he wrote or something? That's a good point too. Possibly worked on building the planes. Something that had him to do hands-on heavy work. But I don't know.
And they discovered something north of 100,000 particles on the tie. Importantly, there was a comprehensive list of these particles put together, and they were analyzed.
Do you guys know that when you fart, there's poo particles that come out, and they're called farticles, if you guys didn't know?
they were placed in an Excel spreadsheet. And this list of particles not only listed the particles, but also provided the chemical signature for the particles found on the tie. And again, north of 100,000 particles. What I started to do about a year ago, was actually go through these 100,000 particles. Specifically, I was looking for something that stuck out. I call it something tantamount to commercial DNA. Again, just as human DNA points to a specific person, specific individual, my thought was perhaps I could find something that was one of a kind that pointed to a specific company, because obviously these particles came from somewhere. And I found it. A few months ago, I found 3 particles of an exceptionally rare titanium alloy. It's actually titanium and antimony.
Oh, so that is what they talked about. It wasn't just regular titanium. It was super titanium.
And it's a very unusual alloy that was experimented with in the 50s and 60s, and basically was of no use to the aerospace sector or apparently anything else, and it was abandoned. But importantly, there were a couple of patents associated with this alloy, one from the early 50s and one from the mid 60s, 1965. Now, why that's important is because D.B. Cooper obviously had 3 of these particles on his tie, and it does appear that there is no place in the world that he could have picked up these 3 particles outside of the company where these particles were experimented with. And the company where these particles were experimented.
No way. Did they really? A barber from Poland? Sweeney Todd must have not been that far off after all. Dude, serial killers are gonna get so scared. Frickin' find Bridge Guy, find Jack the Ripper. They're talking about Boulder PD is gonna use John Bonet's DNA. They're gonna find him. Easy. So yeah, it says earlier in the year, DNA evidence emerged that suggests we can identify the true identity of Jack the Ripper. A shawl found by the body of Catherine Eddowes that contains forensic stains has been used to identify the killer as Aaron Kosminski, a 23-year-old barber from Poland. Wow. I think I might do a whole live stream on that tomorrow. We're going to finish here with this DB Cooper thing, but I'll probably do, if that's true, I'm going to research it and I'll do a whole live stream on that one.
Experimented with was the company that was named on these patents, which was called RemCrew Titanium. RemCrew Titanium existed in the 50s. It was a company that was owned partly by Remington Arms and Crucible Steel. That's where you come up with the name RemCrew. Then in around 1958, Crucible Steel bought out Remington's portion, and it became known as Crucible Steel. Then in the late 60s, it was bought out by Colt Industries, ironically another arms manufacturer. For our purposes today, I'm just going to refer to this company as RemCrew, even though it's changed names over the years. So,
yeah, good job. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Rare
Crazy, huh?
Particles was never commercially produced and never commercially disseminated. It was just experimented with. That came from RemCrew Titanium, and
Okay, so this RemCrew Titanium thing, not to be confused with Renfrau or any kind of alias by anybody we know, but this specific titanium, this is making sense. So he's saying that there was 2 previous patents that were created, one in the 50s and one in the mid 60s, and this specific titanium alloy wasn't used for anything, and it was like deemed useless at the time. But I guess I'm picking up what he's laying down. If some of those particles were in fact found on that tie, then yeah, you got to look into that, because that's really interesting. But at the same time, I really wish that you can also have some black JCPenney ties from that factory to compare them to. Because what if, by some chance, all of those black ties have the same particles on them, and it's not connected to DB, Dan Cooper, whatever. But Just saying, that's interesting. Yeah, guys. Literally, a barber. That totally Sweeney Todd. Like, it is stereotypically true, I guess. Yeah, it's huge. Huge news for genetic genealogy and familial genealogy. That's awesome. Barely Human, good to see ya. We're about ready to get out of here, but man, I don't know if you heard, might have found Jack the Ripper. That's crazy. And also, just yesterday, they're talking about maybe finding D.B. Cooper. This guy's explaining how they found on D.B. Cooper's tie, they found very, very, very rare particles. Like some kind of, they found like stainless steel and aluminum and titanium, but they also found some super secret titanium alloy, ammonium, crazy super steel. I don't know. So it might mean something.
We have patents that back that up. Patents from, importantly, a patent from 1965. Again, keep in mind that D.B. Cooper's tie was manufactured between 62 and 64, so obviously the particles had to accumulate on the tie after the tie was manufactured. So the fact that we have a patent that goes back to 65, I think, is really very important here.
Wait a second here. That makes a lot of sense too.
Manufactured. So the fact that we have a 4, so obviously the particles had to accumulate on the tie after. Patents that back that up. Patents from, importantly, a patent from 1965. Again, keep in mind that D.B. Cooper's tie was manufactured between 62 and 64, so obviously the particles had to accumulate on the tie after the tie was manufactured. So
really quick, I see where he's going with this, guys, but I don't like it at all because it's almost misinformation, because he said that there was 2 patents, not one in 1965. He said that this special particle titanium, well, it was also present in a different patent that was in 1955, which was way before the tie was manufactured. So I get what he's saying, that if the ties were manufactured before 1965, yeah, how did the particles get on there? But there was already patents that were made. That particle already did exist, so I don't know why he said that. But
so the fact that we have a patent that goes back to 65, I think, is really very important here. The chemical signature for these 3 particles is perfectly identical to what is listed on Macron Labs. So again, there's no reason to think that these 3 particles came from anywhere other than Rem Cru titanium. I think that's a critical thing. Than Rem Cru titanium. The chemical signature for these 3 particles is perfectly identical to what is listed on Macron Labs. So again, there's no reason to think that these 3 particles came from anywhere other than Rem Cru titanium.
So again, this Rem Cru titanium, so obviously whoever manufactured this might be what D.B. Cooper is tied to. He listed more than one patent. He didn't only list that one patent from Rem Cru, so maybe that one in 1965 is the real deal. Wow. Yeah. Absolutely. Could be a stolen tie too, yeah. Completely. You know, I joked about D.B. Cooper being bridge guy, which is silly, but did you know that the Dallas police were looking for a killer of Officer Tipplet, who was murdered the same day as JFK? And upon capturing the shooter, Lee Harvey Oswald, it was soon discovered he also had killed the president just prior. Wow. People get around. So many coincidences. Some of them aren't, I guess, but... yeah. Maybe it's not just that rare titanium alloy, because there was also aluminum, stainless steel. Maybe all of them together paints a better picture of how it's connected to Remcro titanium, as opposed to that other patent that was made in the 50s. Because this is what he's saying. He's saying that the tie was made before this patent was put out with the special titanium material. So it had to have been after that the alloy got on his tie. So that's his argument. But there was prior patents, so that chemical didn't only exist in 1965. But there's he mentioned that there was 3 particles, which was the stainless steel, the aluminum too. Maybe it makes sense. I think he knows what he's talking about more than I do, but
I think that's a critical thing. In addition to the 3 titanium antimony particles, there were an array of other particles. There was other titanium, not only commercially pure, but alloyed titanium. There was stainless steel. There was aluminum. There were rare earth elements found, and importantly, there was also salt. There was an abundant amount of salt found on the tie. Now, Tom Kay proved that the salt that was found on the tie is not table salt. It's not the kind of thing that you would find at McDonald's on your French fries. This is more of an industrial type of salt, and there was an abundant amount of that on there. So,
yeah, this is weird.
this is also very important here when we're.
You know what's important here is if somebody's working with these materials, why the hell are they doing it in a tie? Don't they have a freaking uniform to handle these metals and materials with? I mean, I could understand having a fancy lab coat. Do you wear a tie with a lab coat? No. Why are all these things present on his tie? Did he work in it?
We're talking the tie particles. There are 2 broad categories of tie particles. We have tie particles that appeared to come from a lab, a research lab, very small particles, and we also have some tie particles that appeared to come from a shop, a machine shop. There were some very small coiled pieces of aluminum. There's 1 particle, and we have a photograph.
So, is there any people that were connected to both the lab and the shop? I guess he's going to answer
There's
that.
1 particle that's of stainless steel that has a titanium smeared into it, so it does appear there was some sort of mechanical application there. So again, particles that came from a research lab as well as particles that appeared to come from some high-end sophisticated manufacturing shop. Remcrew Titanium was a major supplier of specialty metals to Boeing for both their military and commercial aircraft. This included the Boeing.
Wow. This Remcro place they provided to Boeing. Boeing was the exact plane that he jumped out of. That's crazy. And yeah, I wonder, I mean, if he's working in his tie and he's getting all that stuff on it, it's not that unheard of. I just think, they would have uniforms or something else. Hey, this account. Good to see you, this account. MS here, right on. Yep. You said maybe he was working on the planes or something like that. Yep. That's what it's looking like. I wonder if they have a person in mind. I haven't watched this yet, but damn. And this doesn't seem like hearsay or just a conspiracy theory with people saying they solved the case. This seems pretty heavy. The only thing is the obvious that that Happy Tree said is, what if he just stole the tie? He conveniently took it off and left it behind before he jumped. I mean, he could have, I don't know. What's up, Paula? Wouldn't it be funny if DB ended up being a lowly factory worker that ran a brake press and outsmarted Ellie for all these years? That would be nuts. A guy who accidentally jumped into the forest in the middle of the night in a storm, survived somehow, never jumped out of a plane before, never was in the military. That would be really funny. I don't see that happening, though. I see the person who did this having at least the bare minimum deployment, like 3 or 5 years or something. You have to at least be maybe not a paratrooper, but at least go through basic training and learn how to jump out of a plane. I don't see how someone couldn't to do this. Man. Very interesting, huh? You had a stray cat come around and you called him DB Cooper? Aw. Call him Cooper. Oh no, the dog guy looked like Dennis Rader too? That would have scared the crap out of me. You have a crazy conspiracy? Well, does it make sense to you now knowing that he works on planes and stuff? Does your POI Does your POI fit what this guy's talking about now?
727.
I'm excited.
Notably, the 727 first rolled out November 27th, 1962. The first flight was February 9th, 1963, and it entered service with Eastern Airlines February 1st, 1964. So, again, those dates, that early 60 time frame, seems to constantly reoccur here. REM Crew was eventually sold off into several pieces. One of these pieces was known as Crucible Industries. Crucible Industries, what it is now is, or what's left of it basically, is based in Syracuse, New York. Now, I had a conversation several months ago, I believe it was April, with the president of Crucible Industries and talked with him about the tie and specifically the particles that were found on the tie. And this gentleman said that based upon his experience, whoever wore that tie appeared to come from a research lab and appeared to come from a titanium research lab, given the abundant amount of titanium that was found on the tie.
Yeah, it makes. Is there any other occupations or reasons why that would be on the tie? Also, got to remember that this was before the time of forensics. So, yeah, I say that DB Cooper, like, he conveniently left his tie behind. In modern day, it would make sense that he put all these chemicals on there to throw people off. But back in the day, they didn't know about this. They're not going to do that. I doubt it. So, it might be. Yeah, this might be something. So they're saying here most likely a titanium research lab. MS is saying maybe working for Boeing even. I don't even know. Yeah, we got a couple dating trolls in here. I missed them. Yeah, sometimes the sex bots can't stay away. They can't quit me.
REM Crew Titanium's research lab was located outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in a place called Robinson Township, just a suburb of Pittsburgh there. The Robinson facility, building their lab, opened in 1964. And in addition to having a research lab in the Robinson facility, there was also a metal shop as well. And I'll just leave it at that. I'll kind of just fill that in a second here. So, in recent months, I managed to get a hold of a gentleman who was a retired supervisor at the research lab and worked.
Yeah, it makes sense. They claim that DB Cooper knew the aircraft because he knew how the door opened up and exactly how to jump, etc. Yep, and that when we watched the video before too, there were the flight attendants, the pilots, they all said that he appeared to have a lot of technical knowledge on aircrafts and stuff. The days before titanium was common to the Joe public, right? Nowadays, everything is frickin' titanium. Fake titanium. Huh.
In the titanium division of that lab as well. And I managed to learn a lot about REM Crew Titanium, and specifically the Titanium Research Lab. By the way, this gentleman that I spoke with worked with REM Crew from the 50s into the 90s, so he was there the entire time. So among the things that I learned from him is that the Titanium Research Lab, again, which is where DB Cooper appears to have come from, the Titanium Research Lab consisted of about 8 men. That's it, a very small universe of engineers that worked in the Titanium Research Lab. And these men in the research lab, by the way, did wear ties. And then we have photographs of guys in the research lab wearing ties.
Dude, this guy is coming with it. I think he answered every question that I've asked. I guess I'm not shocked. Researchers wear ties. You know, I would be shocked if construction workers wore ties, but so that makes sense too.
And so we know for sure that they were wearing ties, which is obviously a critical component because Cooper
Alan
obviously
Thicke.
was wearing a tie. Now, there were assistants as well that numbered more than 8. The assistants did not wear ties, so it's just the research lab engineers themselves that wore.
Wow, see, they're going in detail here. The assistants didn't wear the ties. Pretty much the managers wore the ties, the big boys. And whoever he spoke with he worked at Renfro from the 50s till the 90s or just whatever. He probably knew who D.B. Cooper was. Damn. Okay, now how many of those guys were left-handed and chain smoking with their left hand all day?
That wore ties. I learned that the engineers would research and regularly experiment with several alloys, and that they would often work between the lab and the shop. The engineers would create something in the lab, they would go to the shop, have it cold rolled, drilled, things of this nature. So that wasn't uncommon for these guys to be going back and forth. And again, it makes sense when you consider that D.B. Cooper's tie was a clip-on tie. Obviously, anything other than a clip-on tie would be exceptionally dangerous to be wearing around any type of machinery, any type of apparatus. I also learned, and this is important.
No, that makes sense. No, I think that's fair to say. Didn't everyone wear ties, hats back then? Yep. I guess the assistants didn't, though. Pretty much, that's the only thing he made clear was the assistants didn't wear the ties there. He has pictures, proof.
That there were
This guy knows who D.B. Cooper is, dude. I want to know. I want to know who it is.
a limited number of engineers who would travel to Boeing on a
Engineers who traveled to Boeing from Renfro. Guys, look it up. Look it up.
regular basis through the course of their business. Again, Rem Crew had a significant amount of business that they conducted with Boeing. Among the conversations that I had with this retired supervisor,
Told you he wasn't an idiot. I knew he wasn't an idiot.
I described D.B. Cooper's appearance. I let him know this is what I'm looking into. It appears that D.B. Cooper came from this place. This is who D.B. Cooper is based upon the witness descriptions. And focusing on the flight attendants and one of the ticket agents, these are the people who really paid attention to D.B. Cooper. A couple of the important things is that we know that D.B. Cooper is somewhere in the 45 to 50 year age range. We know that the guy was about 6 foot, 6'1", actually pretty tall for some.
Hell, okay. So how does he know 6 foot, 6'1"? We looked at the FBI. We looked at the FBI website, and they had a very, very big range. They said 5'9" to 6'1", didn't they? Hey, he's between 5'9" and 6'1", but no. And I choose to believe this guy. I like this guy, this Robin Thicke guy. 6 foot or 6'1", I'll take that.
Somebody of that era. I actually dove into the statistics here and learned that American men that were born in that 1920 time frame, only 10% were 6 foot or 6'1". So we're looking for somebody who's a little on the tall side for that age. Upon describing these characteristics, explaining who D.B. Cooper was based upon the information here, the supervisor said that it sounds like you're talking about.
Oh, wait a second. Who's Robin Thicke and who's Alan Thicke? Why did I say Robin Thicke? I swear to God, I don't know who those people are. That's a singer, right? I don't know. I like everything thick. I like everything thick.
Vince Peterson. Vince Peterson is the gentleman behind me here. And that's the first time I heard of the name Vince Peterson. So at that point, I became immediately intrigued, obviously, because we're dealing with a very small universe of people. Again, we're talking about 8 guys. That's it. And so I started digging into Mr. Peterson's background. Mr. Peterson was originally from New York State, served in the Merchant Marines during World War II.
Is he outing him out? Oh, hell no. Dude, I think he's releasing his identity. He must be dead.
Was originally from New York State, served in the Merchant Marines during World War II. Mr. Peterson was originally background. Mr. Peterson.
What Peterson?
So I started digging into Mr. Peterson's background. Well, again, we're talking about 8 guys. That's it.
A possibility of 8. Who is Peterson?
So at that point, I became immediately intrigued, obviously, because we're dealing with a very small universe of people. Again, we're talking about 8 guys. That's it.
Wow.
And so I started digging into Mr. Peterson's background.
Who?
Mr. Peterson was originally from New York State, served in the Merchant Marines during
If his name is Alan, I swear to God, Alan Peterson? Jimmy Peterson? I want to know what kind of a Peterson he is.
World War II, later moved to Washington, D.C., where he
World
met
War
his
II,
wife,
Washington,
who
D.C.,
ironically happened to
married.
work for the FBI. Obviously, she
Wife
was not
worked
an
for
agent. They
FBI.
didn't have female agents back at that time, but
My
she
God.
worked for the FBI. The family moved to Midland, Pennsylvania, which is where REM Crew was headquartered in the 1950s.
Oh, shit.
And Mr. Peterson began working for REM Crew Titanium at that time.
Went to Pennsylvania. That's where Rem Crew
In
is.
1964, again, there's that 1964 date popping up again. Mr. Peterson and his family moved to the suburbs of Pittsburgh, where he started working at the REM Crew Research Lab.
Okay.
And again,
okay.
the research lab there opened in 1964. Mr.
Vince
Peterson worked
Peterson.
on titanium and other metals, but his
Crazy.
specialty, what he was kind of known for, was working on
Vincent.
titanium. And I have some photographs of his coworker. His coworkers gave him sort of a specialty item that listed all the various titanium patents and things that he was involved with during his years there. Additionally, and I think very importantly, Mr. Peterson studied the effects of salt on titanium, specifically the corrosive aspects of salt on titanium. And he
Oh my God, this guy is caught. I swear to God. Is that crazy? If this is true, this would mean that D.B. Cooper is an engineer, which makes him like super smart, and then he married a female FBI agent, and he said that they didn't have female agents at that time because they were like sexist and stuff, but I'm sure she did something like really smart about criminals, so he was probably studying her. Oh my God. This guy's a madman.
actually wrote pretty extensively about this. Why this is important, again, obviously, is because there was a fair amount of salt found on the tie.
A salty
So
boy.
Finding academic papers attributed to Mr. Peterson is, I consider, intriguing, because obviously he was looking into this. Now, I had openly speculated in the past that perhaps the salt was
Right.
indicative of somebody who lived and worked.
I'm thinking that he's going to have to come out and say, okay, he's dead. Because I swear to God, wouldn't it be cool to be hearing this story from D.B. Cooper himself? Icarus says, I thought titanium was corrosion resistant. I have titanium piercing jewelry. Maybe I should switch to surgical stainless steel. Maybe it is. I think all that they didn't say that it was corrodable, or however you say that. That's what he was studying, is if it was, if salt corroded titanium. I don't know. I thought that titanium didn't rust and stuff, though. That's what I thought. Hey, that's a really good point too. Bourbon and soda. See who, he probably ordered that normally. Again, and I'd like to know what kind of cigarettes those were that were left behind and why they were lost. Flight attendants, see, no forensics back then. They probably just emptied the ashtray without a second thought.
In a cold weather climate, a place where they applied salt in the wintertime, melt the ice, that type of thing. But this seems like a very plausible explanation for the salt on the tie as well. In 1971, the entire aerospace sector experienced a significant downfall. This included Western Pennsylvania, the specialty metals and steel industry.
Yeah, good question, SD. He just said, all he said was Pennsylvania. But if you look up where the Renfro Industries, Pennsylvania, 1960s. Looks like they're... The hell is this? I accidentally got to a religious website. I'll have to check some other time.
There were literally tens of thousands of workers who were laid off or idled during this period of time. This is well documented, and this started in the spring of 1971. And
that, good job. Yeah, see, you guys, I like having the chats. You guys are pretty smart. Just kind of rest that he would be foreign or like from Canada. Bourbon is a USA thing. Yep. Bourbon's like between whiskey and scotch, I think. Bourbon, it goes whiskey. Bourbon is kind of like aged whiskey, and then scotch is aged even more. Kind of how I think of it anyway. That's what I'm thinking, Paula. How convenient to have a wife who can easily provide you with the documents needed to change your identity, or like just to provide you with details. Okay, what's going to happen? What can I expect in this investigation? What? God, that guy's smart. An engineer plus an FBI agent. Even if she didn't know that, imagine she didn't know that he did that. That would be crazy. But even if she didn't, he could still get so much info from her and help. Huh. Yeah.
About a year later, as 1972, the summer of 72 approached, things started to turn around in the metals industry. Boeing obviously had problems that persisted for many years, and obviously Boeing as well had a significant number of layoffs in 1971 specifically, which again, this is when the sky...
Are you... Really? That's it?
So... All right.
Oh, man, that sucks. Let me try to Google something really quick. DB Cooper identified. Yeah, Vince Peterson. There you had it. I'm going to pull this up really quick. I think it might be Vince Peterson, guys. I don't think this is a conspiracy theory here. I think this is some real shit. Yeah, DB Cooper expert says he's discovered the new suspect in decades-old mystery. Is it the same one that we just played?
Con todo, para salir adelante.
Connor, well, it's a fascinating and famous unsolved case with roots right here in the Pacific Northwest. The D.B. Cooper case stumped the FBI and cemented itself in pop culture. Now one true crime expert says he may have solved the mystery. Fox 12's Kendra Kent shows us.
The FBI officially closed this cold case several years ago, but there are plenty of...
Man, if he's so smart, why not plan an easier heist than hijacking a plane? I agree with you. Probably a lot easier ways to get money, but maybe he wanted to be the only plane hijacker in history to never get caught. Because that takes a lot of smarts, though. It's smarter to get away with a plane hijacking than it is to do an easier heist, but I see exactly what you're saying. Yeah, right? They just cut it off like randomly. Like that's something I would do. But that was a news station. Why did they do that to us? We'll never know. We'll never know. Was that Clint Eastwood? Was he left-handed? Let's ask Chandra. Chandra? Chandra. Chandra. Call her KK.
Amateur sleuths who are dedicated to solving this mystery, including one expert who says he's found a new suspect, and it's all based on D.B. Cooper's famous tie. Could one of the nation's greatest mysteries finally be solved?
This is new. This is brand new evidence.
D.B. Cooper, the infamous man who hijacked a Portland flight and secured a $200,000 ransom before parachuting to an unknown fate back in 1971. It's something the FBI spent nearly a half-century investigating before giving up in 2016. But the lore of the Pacific Northwest mystery lives on, with amateur sleuths determined to crack the case.
Would that be so funny if they were like, yep, Vince Peterson, he never showed up to work after 1965. We never knew what happened to him. Then you'd be like, okay, it's him. Definitely him. No question now.
Now one of those investigators.
Look at him. There he is. They shouldn't have showed his face. Now I think he's not as cool as I did. He doesn't have a cool face. He has a creepy face. That guy looks like he's violating me, and he's not even trying to. He's probably dead. Ew.
Eric Eulis, known for his History and Discovery Channel
The
features
picture was
on
behind him the whole time? Really?
his History and
Dude, that video that we just watched is so stupid. They didn't even show the picture behind him or the bag next to him. They just showed a clip of him talking and then cut it off without warning.
Discovery Channel features on the subject says he's made a breakthrough in the case.
The tie has actually given us 3 very important particles that I would consider.
This was just Rua. Yesterday they solved the case. Just yesterday. I'd like to know when he left his job and what his wife did around the time of the hijacking. Me too. Was that an age progression? No, that's him. That's Vince. His name is Vince Peterson. They identified him. Crazy. They highlighted recovering the particles from the tie on the Discovery Show Expedition Unknown. Yep, that's what he's just talking about right now. He went super in-depth on where the particles belong to, the patents that even existed with those chemicals, how Renfro Industries is connected to Boeing. Boeing made those planes? What the F, man? I bet he didn't even tell us if he was alive or dead. So let's see if he'll tell us this time. Kendra?
Very significant.
The smoking gun the tie DB Cooper left behind on the plane. Eulis says he discovered new evidence pointing to just one suspect. Eulis says he analyzed 2017 lab reports where an abundance of unique metal particles were found on the tie. From there, discovering there was just one Pennsylvania metal manufacturing company at the time with special patents on those particular chemicals.
They appear to be something tantamount to commercial DNA in that it points to a very specific company.
Yeah, I gotta not get my hopes up. If he was born in 1920, that would make him 102. So let's be careful there. He's probably not here. Again, that is a big thing. We don't know that the tie was even his. What if they're doing this for no reason? My sources say yes. He built a cabin shortly after landing in Montana, and he befriended a guy named Mick Dodge, and they've been making shoes out of tires ever since, like the indigenous, and they walked to Yellowstone. That's what I think. Me either. I don't want to hear the end of this. I'm sure they're going to tell us he's dead. I think it's romanticized too. I'm not lying. I was saying earlier, I'm not sure if you were here. You know, I always have to watch myself in true crime about romanticizing or fantasizing or glorifying serial killers or, you know, people who have victims. And this DB Cooper thing, pretty much victimless. I mean, when he hijacked a plane, I'm sure that was probably the scariest moment of some people's lives. But at the same time, this guy's a badass. Victimless crime, pretty much. And he, jumped out like a commando. Did he survive? Did he not show up for work anymore? I want to know.
And a very specific division within a company at a very specific time.
And stunningly, Eulis says he found there were only 8 researchers at the then called Rim Crew Titanium working on those projects at the time, and they all wore the same style of clip-on ties. Eulis says it was a retired company manager who recently told him a man named Vince Peterson, this man, fit the bill for DB Cooper's description and was somebody who regularly traveled to the Pacific Northwest on business for the company.
Someone who normally traveled for the company to the Pacific Northwest, okay.
Eulis says Vince Peterson died back in 2002.
He died in 2002, 20 years ago.
And he has since spoken to his son.
I asked his son, I said, do you think it's at all possible that your father could have been DB Cooper based upon you know, what I'm bringing here. And he said he just can't see it. He can't see his father being D.B. Cooper.
Huh. Interesting.
You know, to the best of his knowledge, his father was always an honest person.
Well, was he rich? I mean, FBI with an engineer, that's a pretty hefty household income, you would think, but I mean, was there any random sports cars? Any
hope is that maybe somebody comes out of the woodwork that knew Peterson or could provide some additional information with respect to that.
If you are interested in learning more about this case, there is the 4th annual CooperCon coming up right here at Higgins Center in downtown Vancouver. That's going to be a big one. An entire conference dedicated to exploring this mystery and lore of the Pacific Northwest. And we will post more details about the conference in the online version of the story at kptv.com. Reporting in Vancouver, Kendra Kent, Fox 12 Oregon.
Man, that is crazy. Look at him. He looks like a pervert. Just kidding. I'm going to look worse than that when I'm his age. Yeah, so it said was a retired company manager who recently told him an employee named Vince Peterson fit the bill for D.B. Cooper's description and was someone who regularly traveled to the Pacific Northwest on business for company during that time period. Well, if they ask the son and the son says, I just can't see it, they need to do some more research. Where was he? Did he not show up for work? Was there a vacation? What happened with his wife? This is crazy, man. Crazy. Right? He's a legend. A legend of the fall. From the fall and the grizzly bear ate him. All jokes aside, it is believable. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people thought he was dead. But alright, guys. Think I'm going to get out of here. Slim, if you're here, I'll see you in a minute. Call you on Discord. That was interesting. I really wasn't expecting that at all. Not only is D.B. Cooper probably solved, but Jack the Ripper was also just possibly identified. So that's 2 extremely prolific true crime cases that might have been solved. That's cool. But okay, guys, I'll see you tomorrow. Hope you guys have a good day. And I will see you later. That's a big boy.